This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world.
The theme that everybody's kind of gotten to know with Matt and Michael is we've got 1 through 6 bullet points. We never really seem to stick to them, but we'll get through them. First one is general feelings of the week. As the roller coaster of entrepreneurship rolls, we kind of talk about the feelings that are hitting us this week and what we're seeing for an outlook at our businesses. Number 2 is sales and marketing. What are we doing to get more leads into the funnel? How are we getting those leads to convert into sales? Number 3, engineering and R&D. With small businesses, we love making new products. So what are we talking about? What are we choosing to kill? What are we choosing to move on with? Number 4 is company-wide updates and improvements. With a growing business, typically you don't have all the SOPs in place. We're creating those. So we're sharing the things we've liked, the things we haven't liked, the things we've wasted money on, and where we're going next. Number 5 is what have you been Googling this week to kind of get an insight of what's at top of mind for us. Number 6, we like to give you a little bit of information about Matt and Michael, so we'll cover something personal at the end. Well, I guess I'll roll off general feelings of the week. I am tired and proud is probably the best way to put it. For those of you that aren't aware, had a little one this week, so I actually haven't been in the office at all, but I've been watching a lot of stuff come through via email, and so the tiredness comes from the little one, and the proud actually comes from my team, seeing the amount of execution that I'm seeing getting done, how they're handling working with clients and outside vendors.
Yeah, I can tell you're tired.
Yeah, it's been I think the largest string of sleep I've had in the last 4 days is like an hour.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's well, Amanda had a C-section, so she's been really out of it. So it's like, all right, how do I take care of the little one as much as possible so she can sleep has really been my goal. So running on lots of espresso is what I'm fueled by.
Yeah, I've been there, never an hour and a half at a time though.
Yeah, it's a different stint, but it's definitely getting better.
Cool. Well, congrats.
Thank you. How's Michael doing?
Good. Yeah, it's my birthday. So
happy birthday.
You won't forget now that it's just the podcast after your son's birthday.
No kidding. Yeah, that's great. So how old is Michael?
27.
27. All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel old. I'm in the late 20s now.
Yeah, it's especially in that the Silicon Valley area where you kind of are.
We're not
old.
in Silicon Valley. We're in LA.
You're cool. I mean, from us Midwesterners, I mean, man, that's just down the road.
Yeah. Just down the road. I hate the feeling of getting older, but that's probably me being too hard on myself, always wishing I was further. It's been a really good week. We've been kind of trying to catch up on, well, not catch up, but plan for this kind of influx of turnkeys. I feel like we're starting to really get into the swing of things with sales. And then, last week I talked about that air vice, which we have since tabled. I know I seem to be all over the place. To revisit our pallet loading system, which I've been super excited about. And it's probably worth down the road in the podcast here for you to sanity check me a little bit too.
I've been watching it come together. You must have had a lot of CAD done on that thing to move that quick.
We'll talk about it. It didn't just come together in an instant. It was a project that we paused.
Okay.
And, now I actually regret pausing it, seeing how much the time, money, and energy we'd already put in, how close we were.
Yeah, that's rather impressive to see. Like you were like, I'm not sure, and then all of a sudden the next Instagram reels I start watching. You're just talking about designing this. How's it already getting bolted together? It was done. There's no way you designed that in a week.
No, we did not. But let's try to stick to the.
Yeah, sounds good. So sales and marketing, you're talking about how the sales is working on the turnkey stuff and what you're liking. What about that? Think the system's tuned on?
I mean, moving up market, I think has been serving us really well. And we just kind of keep pushing on that to where, it used to be like a big order for us. What was a standard kind of 2-op turnkey for like 20 grand, and now that's kind of on the smaller end of the orders we're looking at. So we keep pushing up market. The turnkeys are getting more and more complicated. We're going from doing a couple ops on a part to doing 6, 7, 8 operations. So we're starting to talk to customers who are consistently buying a CNC machine to run a singular component. And that's been super super easy to deal with that kind of customer because we set it up once, we get it working, we get the process reliability there,
That's
as opposed to being able to tear it down constantly.
that's a really interesting theme to hear, is that these customers are running one part on those machines. Is this a new part to these shops? Is this like, are you seeing anything trending throughout that in terms of market coming back to the US is really where I'm going.
You know, it's kind of too early to tell. From what I can see, I think most of these customers have already been making the component and already been making it domestically, and they're
Okay.
just hitting enough volume where they're saying, "Oh, it's inefficient. We're going to buy a machine." And as we continue to try to push up market, I'm kind of changing my strategy, and I'm now starting to push things like, okay, can we get our first turnkey in where we don't just go and design everything or maybe even install it. But there's a couple other integrators who do something like this where we physically take the machine in our warehouse, build out the whole turnkey, then have it repacked and then shipped to the customer
Yeah.
as kind of a one and done operation.
I'd really encourage that. From my experience, building machines and having control of all the tools you need for making those modifications makes your process far more efficient, especially if you're going to continue to go upstream. I know that's been a common theme that customers have asked us for is, hey, we'd love to have you build this new machine for us, but we have all this maintenance that needs to be done. And we want you to come and retrofit these other ones. It's like,
Hmm.
I've been paid a lot in promises. Usually it's got to the point where we just say no to those jobs because I just never feel like that big machine's coming. Like if I
Right.
felt like I could get a contract, and that's usually the way I follow it up. All right, we'll do this work if you can guarantee if we execute on that, we get this other one, but we're going to scope them out of the gate. Like, let's wait. And I'm like, I guess I think we know where this is going.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think where I'm going is I think you're looking at it very correctly to try and get that in-house.
Right. And I think it obviously gets more and more cost prohibitive to do that, but I think the nice thing is that we can kind of separate out our business even further to where, we have that semi turnkey process that we can handle, automating someone's, real production run that's relatively simple, for 12 grand in hardware and 8 grand in the turnkey. That's something we can still do remote. And then we can go and have these kind of big wins, more like a service company than a product company. Um,
What's cost prohibitive? I don't understand that about
Well,
doing
I
that
mean, for
in-house.
the customer. So, like, obviously, doing a full turnkey, like, if you're buying a new machine, you're shipping it to us. We're putting on a bunch of custom stuff to make the automation happen. Then we're
Mhm.
shipping that machine to you. With a $100,000 machine, that might be $180,000 endeavor. So, we don't want to
Yeah,
lose the customer base that has 20 grand to spend and already has the machine.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, you need two product offerings. It's a good, better, best. I mean, that you're talking about the best solution there is where it's very custom, very tailored. But I mean, I thought you were going to say like the
Yeah.
cost of rigging and stuff like that. I was like, that's negligible.
Yeah. Yeah. And like with our semi turnkeys, one of the limitations that we always run into is that, we don't necessarily have the customer's complete tooling list. We don't necessarily have the customer's complete CAM. And, there's a little bit of back and forth, which is, whenever that's there, it's an opportunity for things to kind of fall apart because we're dependent on, the apps engineers and the actual programmers from their side to follow our process, post out of the correct work coordinate system and, hit the button.
You bring up a good point there for actually like that communication gap, and that could be a sales and marketing, and it could be a something further down during deployment is, do you record all your meetings with clients?
We don't, and it's something I've debated doing, but I also have in the back of my head that, every single, major deal we've done has always been under NDA. It, probably won't create an issue, but, you know, I- some of our clients, especially as we go more and more enterprise, get to the point where, we literally can't do a normal Google Meet. We have to do it through, their, Teams, GovCloud thing. Um, I guess it depends on the customer. I probably could do it more.
Yeah, maybe it's an 80/20, just getting some of it because it turns into good training too.
Yeah, and I say that, but 95% of the time we still use like a Google Drive to share all the customer documents in one place. And then when
Mhm.
we run into that customer, that's when we do the deviation of, going through their whatever enterprise virus scanning like file server thing they have.
Yeah. Which then at that point, you almost feel like it's not even as secure. Like we've
Yeah.
gone through some of those portals where it's like, hey, here's your username and your password in the same email.
Yep.
Like, what was the
Every
point?
time.
But yeah, I guess that's part of the sales and marketing still. Uh,
But yeah,
Anything
in
else you want
terms of like advertising, I still feel lost in terms of like I don't know what's working. Our everyone I think has kind of experienced terrible conversion in February through Meta ads, and I cranked up Google ads that sometimes work really well, sometimes don't. The thing I'm just still trying to figure out is how much is throwing 10 grand a month at pay per click converting into these customers. And we even tried to reach out to all of our larger customers and kind of got non-answers when we asked the where did you find us question.
to? Yeah. Uh, have you tried doing like just brand awareness campaigns rather than trying to do like more bottom of funnel keywords on pay
Hmm.
per click or Google ads? Have you tried just doing like brand awareness campaigns rather than this is our gripper? You just keep
Right.
showing them stuff rather than the sales pitch at the end, just brand awareness. Have you tried that?
Well, the good thing, so we're not running a brand campaign right now. And for the people who don't know, that's just like you Google gimbal automation and it's an ad that says gimbal automation and goes at the top. So that one of our competitors doesn't show above us. The I guess probably maybe I need to kind of take my own medicine here because I keep talking about how I don't know, how a lot of the marketing at our scale is a guess. And then I keep trying to look at the conversion data and, which really I can only get for our, at this point, smallest segment of customers that are 10% or less of our revenue.
Yeah.
I keep looking at that data to drive those decisions. And I think I keep doing that because I don't have any data at all for the rest of, where our revenue is coming from.
Yeah, it's so tough on trying to track that. I know like I just had a call earlier this morning about tracking where our leads are coming from. And it's like, hey, we had 2 form completions, and I know we had a good number of leads actually come in this week. I wish I had solid data saying that I actually dug through them all prior to this call, but I
Hmm.
haven't. It has been an interesting wave, but even then, it's we tried tracking one down with our marketing agency on the call, and it was they clicked on a form, they filled it out, and then they somehow found me. So they
Hmm.
either went and looked at a LinkedIn ad or they went and searched me directly and then emailed me because they found my email address on LinkedIn and then sent this like very like very specific what they're looking for in a machine. Like, all right, I need to reach out. And that was the first email I saw. So I was like, when the heck did this guy find me? Like, I can't find you in HubSpot. I can't find any spot we've ever
Right.
talked to you. And so I was like, I had to dig into that with our marketing agency. And I was like, we're still unsure of where he actually saw us first based on
Hmm.
that because there was so many touch points. And that's where I was like, all right, this really is almost feeling like just brand awareness is the highest priority for us. And then they're going to go Google us and get to our contact us form.
Yeah. I wonder if like us having, that e-commerce platform where people can go and spend money and I can look at that conversion data, if it's almost doing me a disservice because it's probably the numbers look bad. Like the ROAS looks like, depending on the month, it might be 0.5 to 1.5x. And if I look at that data without looking at the, grand scheme of all the stuff that we've been converting, it becomes easy to spend like way less than we should be on marketing.
Yeah, that's cutting the marketing budget's always the easiest budget. It always seems like, but
Hmm.
it's usually the wrong decision.
Well, and everyone says, 16%, but I mean, do you spend 16% on marketing?
No,
No.
I wish
Yeah.
I could get up that high. I mean, when I bring in my the Merlin board of advisors on that, and I mean, if we go back in time, yeah, when it was basically me in the basement, a couple of us, yeah, we were spending closer to that point. But as we scaled, it just became a number that it was like, all right, you just can't scale that economically. And so now we've kind of flattened out right around 8 to 12% is where we've been living at. 16% marketing. I'd love to be spent.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably around 8 too, and I guess the other question to ask is like, I'm trying to question assumptions. Like, is that true? Because, I've kind of said the same thing of, oh, we can't be spending this much. But, if we were marketing more effectively, would we just have more top of funnel leads? And, even if we couldn't do the work, could we just take higher quality, fewer clients, but higher quality, more profitable clients? And, maybe you have one fewer employee to offset that amount of money, but you're making, the same or more with less effort.
I couldn't agree more with that question. I've asked the board of advisors the exact same question. All of them that grew their businesses north of 100 million, they tried driving their number down to 5%,
Okay.
is what they claimed.
Mhm.
Now, that might have been when they were at 75 million, they were spending 5% and they drove it down over time and they might have been spending 20%. They just didn't really realize it early on. I don't
Right.
have that detail. I've asked our banker what he sees other companies that are in manufacturing. He said sees 0 to 5% for manufacturers. And I'm like, all right, let's take out the companies that want to not grow and want to just can sustain. What is the number for growth? And I can't get an answer. I've asked that same question to a lot of people, Michael.
Well, here's the thing, it might show up as 0 to 5% on their books. But then, let's say they have a distributor. It's, whether it's McMaster or Car Lane or MSC, then they're taking 30 points. MSC is putting the money into advertising, and they might not even know it, but they might be, spending 10 to 20% on advertising, effectively, because the margins have to be made up because they're
Mhm.
selling all in distribution in these like old school channels.
Yeah, that's very true. Uh,
All,
it
all the
depends how you
machinists
want
that
to.
listen are just tuning out right now,
Yeah. Well,
scrubbing through.
there's a lot of okay. That's actually a really good point to bring up the machinist marketing because I've toyed with that. The amount of things you can do there for Google Ads. If like, all right, if you have a niche within the CNC machining space, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant here. There's some serious opportunities
Yeah.
out there. So say you just make, I'm just gonna throw out something. You only machine Inconel and parts of X size, and you can target the keywords for specific industries and markets you want to be going after. You can do that easily with keywords and blogs, SEO content. And then if you want to drive that further and convert those top of funnel sales, there's a lot of tools for dropping directly on your website for quoting. You can be like Exometry
Mhm.
overnight if you're willing to spend $20,000 to $50,000.
Well,
So,
I'm gonna push back on that a little because I thought, with that we could do a lot of these super duper niche ads, CNC gripper, spindle automation, CNC part tending automation with gripper. And what happens is that the search volume is low enough that Google's algorithm or Bing's algorithm basically says, I don't have enough training data. I'm not going to serve this ad at all.
okay, so then it's strictly SEO at that point. If
Yeah.
your market's so niche, then you have to make blogs and content for that to educate and get in front of those markets. But either way, you can get sales converting right on your website if you're just a CNC machinist or that's what your company, I shouldn't say just, I don't like saying that. It's just like what your main focus is of a business. I think there's a lot of ways to automate your sales and marketing and be really kick ass at it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a job shop, you can use something like Toolpath or Paperless. We did that when we were a job shop, and it just embeds in. At one time, we tried like DigiFabster, which, with 3D printing was doing like, automated
That,
pricing.
that's the
Um,
one I evaluated because in 2022, I was evaluating scaling up more of our machining in general and still not against DigiFabster or some of those being right on our website. But what'd you think of that?
well, I mean, you know, as a shop, it was just really hard to get anyone to actually go and buy 3D prints from us. That's what we saw, and that's ultimately why we stopped pushing on the metal 3D printing market.
Oh,
The
you were just so
whereas
early for the market you were probably trying to service.
Yeah, well, also, I think that, the alternatives with 3D printing, because the quoting is so easy, um, are different. And really, where we were hitting our stride as a shop, before I decided to go all in on the automation stuff, was, doing things that had kind of niche machinery that had parts that were huge, not like huge, huge, but like required a water jet or a gantry mill. And the benefit of that is the machines are super expensive, so the competition is relatively minimal. And then the parts are super duper heavy, so you're not going to have them made overseas. So it was really easy to kind of capture a niche market in just like the greater SoCal area
Mhm.
for us. And we didn't really have to put any a large amount of money into SEO or our website, or the stuff just kind of found us. And as long as we made good parts, we could keep going. But of course, it was hard to scale.
Yeah, that's always the hard part, I feel like, with CNC machine shops, having been around many of them, is there's just an economy of scale that gets tougher unless you have liquidity or cash to really just buy your way through.
Yeah, that's it's a business that I think is easy to get going to a point, like, compared to like a product business, but then it's really, really, really hard to grow.
It's so CapEx. Like,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
don't have the cash to just keep landing machines, your margins typically are very thin. I shouldn't say very thin, but they tend to be from having evaluated looking at buying machine shops back in the day and digging into that. And it was like, God, man, I think just building one's more efficient than buying a lot of them that were
Right.
started by boomers is what I was seeing. But it is interesting how thin the margins can drive in that space. I don't know what you saw for margins on machining
Well,
and
the more production oriented you get, the thinner the margins get driven.
yeah, exactly. The closer
But
you get to automotive, the near zero you get.
what about you for sales and marketing?
Sales and marketing for me is really just kind of watching those leads coming in. Had the one call with our agency this week. What we're still in the process of, had the meeting Friday, and we kind of talked about on the podcast last week, is we're actually going to just slice a lot of our accessories is what we're looking at, and leaning out our product servicing. And something we've been toying with, because we have some other products coming that build on just our general ecosystem, is to start offering the accessories as downloadables for free.
Mm.
So that's something we're really toying with. So some
So when
of
you say
the
accessories, is this like the vacuum chuck and like the product?
the core product is our fixturing. So the vacuum
Yep.
fixture system, our automation fixture system, and then we have like the conicals and rubber plugs and the Venturi stuff that like you just need to buy in bulk. And so getting that economy of scale from develop makes sense. But then there's like the accessories, like we make these simple little vices, we make these simple little clamps. We sell some of them when we sell the vacuum chucks, but they tend to be more of a confusion for the customer. So our thought is let's just completely remove those. Start like a downloadable section, especially with some of the what we're coming out with, little teasers, engineering fixture system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you can build test fixtures right on your lab bench. We've been doing this for years. And then you go put them on a shelf and they just live there. They're cost effective rather than
Right.
tearing down, setting up. And then we have these fixtures that just kind of live around and we can take them from machine to machine as we're building. Or if we have a legacy client that we always do a test process, we build them out for them. So we want to release that, but then there's like a bunch of just 3D printed or machine components we make for that are just going to be so onesie twosie, and there's
Mm-hmm.
just not going to be worth the time. We're like, all right, just give them away. We've spent all the time. We've got the value out of them. All we care about is moving the core product. Just give away all these little things and see if that helps create brand awareness. Was our thought. That's probably the big thing that we're toying with right now. I probably shouldn't even say toying with. I think that's really what we've decided we're going to do.
What we do is we kind of create dummy step files that are kind of defeatured to some extent, and pretty much every
Mhm.
product we try to have a dummy step file for, so that the engineer, the apps guy, or whoever is playing with Mastercam or their machine can just download it and try to minimize that friction between asking the question, will this technical product work? And hopefully pulling out a credit card and buying it for on the product side of the business.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what we're looking at doing for the stuff that people can still buy, and then just giving editable step files / SolidWorks files for the other parts so they can just go in and make.
Well, that's pretty
So
cool. I'm excited to see that new product.
yeah, it's not going to be this quarter. We've got a lot of other
Hmm.
things we're wanting to get done. As you've kind of seen, our theme with develop for 25 is we're kind of slowing our pace. We used to be very aggressive on making changes, got out in front of the skis, if you will, a little bit. So now this year is more focused on, all right, we're going to execute stuff very well. We're going to take a little bit longer, think about it, plan it a little bit better, has been kind of the theme. So it'll probably be like Q3, Q4 is when I
Yep.
plan on releasing that. Just don't want to get anybody too excited on the call that some new product's actually coming.
Yep.
So
And do you want to go to the next section?
yeah, so sales and marketing's done. Now we're engineering and R&D, the one that you've been pent up and waiting for.
Oh man. So the background here is that we God, when was it? It was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I had this, we had built the metal 3D printer, and it has this kind of a ROA style, RZ Theta robotic pallet changer for the printer. Not necessary for a 3D printer, but we did it.
Yeah,
Um
sounds very Michael.
yeah. And the backstory there is, not the most recent IMTS, but the IMTS before that. I had, talked with Aroa and some of these other companies about, just buying a machine to do this and kind of retrofitting it. And it was like, oh, we can build you a machine in 2 to 3 years, and it's going to be $300,000 to $400,000. And I was, kind of like, yeah, we're not going to pay that for like a robot that's a lot simpler than like a base CNC machine with a lot less needed precision. So, we went and built the ROA system for the metal 3D printer. We got it working really well. All the metal 3D printing stuff worked, but I have to say that like the palette changer was definitely the most flawless on there. I tried pushing on the business case for the metal 3D printing thing. Ultimately, I kind of declared it as a loss and a lesson learned. And then, we had a bit of a lull in, I don't know, not a lull, but we had some spare engineering time. And I had our senior engineer basically focus on scaling that up, making it something that could go on a CNC machine, pretty much any CNC machine. And, this was a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And he put probably 4 months of design work into it.
So
And
I guess stepping back, was the lull while you were in the 3D printing business, or was this when you were starting Gimbal?
so I think this might have actually started prior to gimbal automation.
Okay.
At least the beginning of the project. And what ended up happening is we got so busy with the contract manufacturing, and the engineering consulting, and we had launched the gripper business all at the same time. And, that was kind of the perfect storm for us to pause this project. And, then fast forward a couple years, this was supposed to be something we would revisit in Q3, Q4 of this year. And then, we had a customer basically tell us, hey, I want the intro load, but I need more pallets. And that became a question of, okay, well, um, the there was an idea of what the customer thought it should be, and we kind of looked into it, and we're like, yeah, this isn't worth building. And then we said, oh, wait a minute, that we had that old external pallet loading system. And then I was like, you know what, let's see how far it is. And when I actually looked into it, turns out the project was much farther than I had thought it was. So then I'm like, okay, let's just start putting it together and see where it is.
So is this client buying one now?
So, well, that's the whole thing of like a lot of the money has already been spent to build this. There's like 30 grand in just materials.
Oh yeah, it doesn't look like a cheap system. I've been
Yeah,
watching. I mean, just the plates that you had to have made are not cheap.
yeah. I mean, just the aluminum. There's 11 grand
Yeah.
in like just material. And then linear rails and ball screw and everything. But we just kind of put it together. I think really the idea with this first customer is that we can build something that is good and pretty much sell it to them at cost, and use that to offset the cost of putting all of this labor into fine tuning it. Really getting the PLC and control code, like getting it great. And I think he's kind of the right customer in the right mindset who understands what it's like to be an early adopter, and that we're going to make it work and make it work really well, but that's going to be a bit of a process.
Yeah, there's lumps in that phase. I mean, you have to have some tough conversations
Yeah.
typically at that portion of a project.
So yeah, we have to be
good.
very selective with that kind of customer you sell the first unit of anything into.
Oh yeah.
But I'm excited about it, but it's something I'm like, okay, we can spend a couple weeks, like get it pretty far, have something tangible to show. And, hopefully, I don't know if we can turn this into, let's get a deposit from the customer, let's build a thing, let's flesh it out, and, close the final sale. But I'm taking all of it with, having the backup case in case that doesn't happen. Worst case, we have a cool pallet system that, we can flush out more slowly on our own.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think you're looking at it correctly. When we sell machines, we're always selling to an early adopter first customer, typically, at least in this journey of our business. So it's kind of got to the point, having gone through more of those lumps, it's like making sure that the customer that, like you said, it's the right customer, and being like, all right, this isn't going to necessarily be the most fun ride. It's not like buying a machine off the shelf, if you will. It's going to be some back and forth and maybe some tough conversations to get it working exactly the way you're envisioning.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I wanted to float by you, one thing I've been kind of struggling with is like, I know how much it's going to cost to build this thing. The first one will probably cost us 70 grand. It'll probably cost us, I don't know, 40 to 50 grand to build subsequent ones. But one thing I've been struggling with is kind of figuring out what the price point should be. We can keep cost optimizing the thing. We could potentially make it smaller and shrink the payload because it can move around like 120 pounds of part weight right now. Um, but I'm trying to figure out like, okay, we keep moving up market to the point where I almost feel like maybe I'm not the customer anymore. Like the customer isn't someone with a 7-8 person shop. The customer is someone with a 40-person shop.
I think that's very much spot on there. You're not selling to 10-person shops
Right.
from my understanding anymore. I mean, that's really when we're selling our custom machines, you're talking to 50-person shops is very small for us at this point.
Right.
It really comes down to their liquidity as cash or their cash flow. So they understand the risk they're taking on with this unique piece of equipment and what they're leveraging.
Right.
That's what I've seen.
But I guess like more what I'm saying is like, okay, who are we competing with? Because we're going and we're basically building something that's like most directly comparable to a Trinity or an Aroa system. And those are systems that you can come out with just pallets and they're $200,000-$300,000. And I look at this and I'm like, well, we're a new entrant to the market. There's obviously some kinks that we're gonna have to work out. Um, I also kind of look at it compared to the complexity of an actual CNC machine. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, this, DN or Haas is $80,000 to $120,000. It's a lot higher complexity and higher precision required, but they also have the economies of scale.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it, because I have a similar battle when we're selling. We can go to the modular robot system or just in general off the shelf stuff. The biggest challenge is, like you said, there is the economies of scale, and there's also the what the market's going to bear. I think
Right.
looking at that, like you said, what the Aroas are costing, stuff like that. I don't have a hard, fast answer for that. I know every time I've created products, whether I was at Vortex Optics and we were releasing optics that were going to be sold in the tens of thousands, to Ring Brothers where hundreds or thousands of units were the volume. It was
Mhm.
always that theme is how do we price this? And it was always like, it was a blend of art and science is what I've always seen in the market, is what I've seen. I will say that being under 2 times your costs usually is a losing equation.
Right.
So I would say at a bare minimum, you should be selling your products for 2 times what they cost you.
Yep. And that's a whole other thing of figuring out what does it cost you, which gets more and more difficult the more stuff you make in house. And we're basically making everything at this point. I mean, it's all water jet and machined in house. And it's kind of funny that way that the more like high end our products go, like we don't make devices in house, and the more expensive it gets, we make almost everything in house. And ironically, that leads to us having less of a precise idea of what our margins are.
Yeah, there's some good lines on Steve Jobs on this, on his rants, that he would go about lost cost accounting, if you will, on
Yeah.
products. I'm sure you've seen some of those reels on Instagram of like how everything's just basically adjusted at the end of the quarter and you just move forward because you just don't know.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to have such massive economies of scale that you've automated the crap out of it, and then you can have give you all your data analytics.
Yeah. And I guess like that's a whole thing too of trying to walk the line between like, not being okay with just not knowing what your margins are to an extent. But also not, I need to definitely push more in the direction of trying to find the information and the data to drive decisions, as opposed to, I think I probably throw my hands up in the air and say, well, I can't know exactly. And I don't dive in enough. I don't go and create bombs and analyze something before it's produced as much as I should.
Yeah, maybe I do have a little bit more of an answer on that then. Is I know that this is always a common theme for entrepreneurs, is overthinking things at this
Mhm.
phase of our business. I think that the number one thing you need to keep moving forward with is selling them and making the next one and
Right.
then learning from it, rather than trying to perfect the first one. Like, I like your approach. You're like, all I'm trying to do is break even. I think you're looking at that correctly. You're going to learn something. You're going to get through it, and then you're going to evolve. I think some of those cost accounting and what the product costs, if it turns into something you actually even
Mhm.
want to take to some, we'll use air quotes on economies of scale for your business, I think those things start falling into place. That's what I've seen for the way that we build machines. We wanted to plan stuff out so well early on. As the issue is we just didn't know what we didn't know. So had we actually spent some of the time just continue, or how we did kind of execute it was we just kept moving forward and knew we were making a bunch of mistakes. But then when the times came that we had some breather room, we took that and took those lessons learned and then didn't repeat those errors. So that's probably what I would look at it as.
Yeah, I guess like talking out loud on all this too, you're definitely pushing me towards, okay, yeah, like you shouldn't be making less than 50%, gross margins. You just shouldn't. And I keep talking about moving more and more up market. And I think I'm kind of accidentally finding what a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs have already known, is that you start with kind of a niche, specific market that you can get good margins on. And then you use that to slowly grow, more and more mass market. The same way that Porsche used to be a company that made, basically building cars in a garage. And then,
Yeah.
eventually came out with an SUV after 17 steps in between.
Yeah. And then your margins get smaller as you climb up, but you're learning as you go.
Yeah, but you make it up on the volume and you had the
Exactly.
profitability early on.
Yep.
And I think I kinda made the mistake of almost selling to myself, right? Like building the products that I wanted. And it turns out that that was kind of a difficult business decision because, at the time, as a 4-person shop, I thought, everybody's going to want the scripper. Um, you know, and the people who actually want grippers are, these 50-person, machine shops. I mean, there's plenty of 1 to 5 man shops who do it and implement it well, but the places that were making the most money, who are the best, fits, are the people doing real serial production who, especially when I started the gimbal automation, I probably couldn't relate to that much.
Yeah, hindsight's always 2020 is
Yeah.
all I'm gonna say to that. I think you're moving forward, you're learning those things. I think that's the key to it. I think it's always easy to look back and say the coulda, woulda, shoulda, because I can tell you I've made a lot of mistakes. I've lost 6 figures on multiple decisions. It's been very tough, but if I continued to dwell on those decisions, I'd probably be paralyzed at this point. So
Right.
it's more or less just, all right, gosh darn it, I made one heck of a mistake there, but I learned from it. Let's move forward. I think that's the same thing. You're gonna figure out, all right, you're gonna get to this upstream market and you're like, oh, now I want to build them kind of just like Aroa. They've figured out how to do something. I'm just gonna try and make ours better, but the same cost. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just giving an example.
Yeah. Anyways, you for engineering R&D?
Well, I guess for us, what I've been hearing from the team after chatting with them a little bit is we have one machine that just got through initial assembly and they're actually testing the software and making parts to spec. So that's what's happened
Good.
in the week while I've been gone, which has been that machine's been in build now from design to build 11 months, 10 months, something like that. So to see it coming together the week I'm gone is pretty cool. And then the other thing that really stood out to me is how much I haven't spent a whole lot of time in hospitals, but how much hospitals are like manufacturing and the SOP is and the scanning, the barcode scanning. I mean, just, you know, I had a bracelet on, Milo had a bracelet. Every time he would leave the room for like some type of test or something like that, they'd scan in and out to make sure you're getting the right child back. But then like even looking like the operating rooms, positive pressure clean room, stuff like that. It's really cool to see. And then seeing some of the companies that are in our sales funnel, like we're talking to, seeing their logos in those areas was really fun for me.
Hmm.
But kind of a
That is
side
cool.
note on engineering and R&D. Uh, since we're kind of speed running a little bit, since we had some technical issues, number 4 is company-wide updates and improvements. Is there anything major you kind of want to talk about there?
Don't know if there's anything. I guess just generally, that our push to move up market, our push to kind of run, fewer higher end projects that have more of an emphasis on large production numbers and process reliability. It's
Hmm.
made things feel less chaotic, which is nice. Um, but it also runs the higher risk of exacerbating cash flow variability.
Let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying correctly. So you're saying now going into building more of the turnkey automation stuff is being less chaotic than making the products, or less chaotic than
Well, we still
having
have
the
to make the
engineering?
products, right?
Or are you saying
But
less chaotic than the consulting customers?
well, I'm pretty much mostly just talking about the automation. Consulting at this point is down to 1 customer that we're pretty happy with, and we're just gonna keep letting that roll.
Okay.
And we're doing 0 job shop work at this point.
Mhm.
There's maybe a legacy customer that comes and we do a one-off thing every 2 months, but so I'm mostly comparing it, doing one, $60,000 job, where there might be like 5 little turnkeys, and we might be doing it on multiple machines.
Mhm.
It's just been less stressful to move that, through our actual like operational process than to move 3, smaller 2-op turnkeys.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense. I see
yeah,
what you're saying. Yeah, I see that pain, and that's something we've seen as we've grown up, or like our business size has grown, if you will, is the size of projects that are easy to do. That number has to get larger
yeah,
because it's just different when you're a small team and you can yell across the office on everything, or everybody knows everything that's going on. You can be very efficient, but then there's just some bulk that happens as you get bigger. So yeah, that pain is real.
and yeah, and it just gets worse, and the only thing you can really do is, standardize to a point.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of ties into that theme that I'm starting to, kind of see the light in focusing on, niche use case enterprise customers, and then, moving, kind of down market, so to speak, and wider volume over time.
Hmm.
like like presumably Haas and DN and Hermla, they're not trying to do these like detailed integrated solutions. They're trying to build machines. Um,
Exactly.
but I think I've been over eager to, kind of live that reality too soon in the past. And I think so it's more of a philosophy thing. It's not like a tangible lean, 6 waste improvement, but I think it's moving in the right direction.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, I guess with those SOPs, that's something we've been talking about for changes that develop is really we made a lot of big changes over the last year here. Now it's been the company-wide improvements or updates is the one that went through. I just pulled up our weekly meeting. The big change that we had is, all right, this is our new folder structure. We've gone through a couple
Oh,
folder
yeah.
structures on the way we handle clients, but it is insane when building custom machines of our size, like the size of folders
Hmm.
and content you need and supplier documentation, contracts, ECO changes, legal stuff, finances, what's
Right.
expected for part, like just everything bloats up so quickly. So we now have tuned in our SOPs and our Gants, and now our folder structure standards change. So when you go in there, you know where everything should be if the project started basically after, the last week or
Hmm.
so here. And we've even
Yeah,
updated a couple.
that's something we need to revisit because, now we've got like 3 standards. We have our Notion system where, it's like our mini ERP, but then we have also a Google Drive that we do for turnkey customers. And then we have a Dropbox that our engineering uses. And that, is not ideal.
No, it's definitely a pain. I mean, I spent like 10 minutes trying to find a document the one
Yeah.
day. I was like, oh my gosh, if this is what my entire team is feeling, and
Hmm.
that's been what they're feeling, like, yeah, we need to fix this.
Yep.
So that's been the one cool thing that I've seen for SOP updates and improvements. Uh, so anything else on your
Cool.
side there? Or?
No, I think my head has kind of been a little bit in the clouds with the high level stuff of, where's the direction I'm taking the business. I'm trying to also focus more on, really being disciplined about like, managing cash and finances and, optimizing like what debt we're taking from whom and and trying to think more like a, mature business owner.
Yeah.
But we've been trying to get everybody to be efficient, but I think these are kind of more, me moving the general, direction of the ship. And then in terms of being in the weeds, it's mostly been, let's work on this pallet loader because it's fun.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I think you gave the right analogy is at your size, you're now moving a ship. You're not moving a golf cart, if you will. So things just start taking longer.
Yeah. And that's a hard balance.
You're saying the lack of patience when you want stuff to go
Well,
faster?
there's multiple elements. There's my lack of patience. There's, we're still relatively new and we lack a lot of SOPs. We're still if we go and, for all I know, like the direction of the company, we could just be building pallet loaders in 2 years. And I would totally believe you if you said that. Right.
Yeah.
And
It's
the,
funny how this works in business.
so, I guess I'm also just like starting to continue recognizing like, even though we have like, established processes and established products at this point, that I'm still trying to figure out, where we're going, and it's always going to be evolving. And even when we hopefully figure that out totally, there's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be a new competitor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Competition's what makes the game fun.
yeah, and stressful.
For sure. All right. What have you been Googling?
What have I been Googling? The escape rooms. We did a really
Okay.
terrible escape room yesterday for my birthday because it was raining and we were supposed to go play pickleball and do it today, so we swapped them around.
Okay.
Um, the and we do this thing where we'll go to an escape room and we're like escape room critics because we've done almost 100 at this point, so we like
You
know
sh-
what a good one is.
you should just start documenting this somewhere and like share that with other local people in LA because you're probably like the upper
Hmm.
percentile of
Yeah.
people that have been to escape rooms, and you could give some really good feedback.
No, I do. I like review them all. There's like this app called Morty where you go and like search escape rooms.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But Googling that a little bit. And then I've been kind of diving into, like we have 3 loans on our bigger pieces of CapEx equipment. And I've been diving into like what are our interest rates? How much equity do we have in these machines? can we refi the loans that are worse? What are the consequences of doing that? Can we do that?
Yeah. Do they have buyout clauses, stuff like that? Yeah.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
early pay clauses, whatever they're called.
I've just been looking on like how can we, pay less in interest and also, have more cash in the bank. That's
You,
what I've been trying to figure out.
depending upon how much you're looking at, SBA rolled out a really cool program called the 7A.
Hmm.
That's very targeted to small manufacturing businesses like us. So you can get operating capital, you can get equipment capital, you can get facility capital, you can leverage it as a line of credit. I think they have a max of 5 million, so it's very targeted to our size of
Yep.
businesses. But that might be something to look at as a refi. The only thing with SBA, having done it for our real estate, is the costs are very real. So there's typically, while you'll pay a lower interest rate, your fees to set them up are higher. So make sure to understand those because the switching costs are far more significant.
Right.
But 7A, I'd check it out. Might be worth your
Cool.
time.
Yeah. I wrote it down.
Yeah. For
What about
me,
you?
it's been baby survival. Has been a portion of it, but I guess business side, the other thing Googling would be I've been we went through the kind of finding more help with like email and sales top of funnel. Do I hire executive assistant sales role dedicated to that? I just downloaded an app called Fixer AI. I don't know if you've come across that.
Mm-mm.
It lives right in my Outlook inbox and it does pretty much everything Dan Martell says you
Mm.
need an executive assistant doing.
Yeah.
So it reads all my emails. It puts them into not the same buckets that he defined, and I'm still tuning that. I just deployed this last weekend, and it's bucketing them. It's drafting email responses based on the way I've responded to old
Mhm.
emails because it read everything I've sent in Outlook. And it has been, I sent on Monday, the day that Milo was born, I sent a handful of emails and it took me less than 15 minutes and I did it from my
Wow.
phone.
How much does it cost?
It's like $50 a month.
Okay.
Like it
Yeah.
was no brainer. I was like, all
Right.
right, if like I will totally give this a shot for $50 a month.
Yeah, for
looks,
sure.
it's a company out of the UK. I looked at like they're small, I will say that, but they have regulatory compliance. They're claiming a lot of things. So if that's all true, I believe the product.
Yeah, and it's one of those things with the executive assistant where, man, I really got convinced and went down that road, and I think you did too for a little bit,
Yeah,
where
still. Yep.
strong convictions loosely held. I was very strongly convinced I needed one for a long time, and then after not having had one for a while, the negative consequences weren't that bad. But you can't live A/B test everything in your life, so
That's a good line there. I like that a lot
Mhm.
because that you definitely have to feel that pain. But this app has solved like 20 to 30% of what I was looking for in an executive assistant, and I'm still teaching it.
Yeah.
So I'm really thrilled with what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I got to look into that. That's really cool.
Yeah. That's been the other thing I've been Googling this week because it's like, all right, how do I buy myself some more time to spend with the little guy?
Yeah, and my whole thing with email too is like I'm either like using it as a way to procrastinate or I'm avoiding it, and it's like one or the other. So I feel like I'm either like typing off emails like bajillion at a time, or like avoiding the probably critical things I need to go over, or on the other end of it, I kind of will just block out email, not even look at it for 24 hours and go do something else. And then some tools to help me actually find a middle ground would be really cool.
Yeah, I think you'd be happy with it. I really want to because it integrates right with HubSpot too. So I'm
Oh, okay.
really curious to see how that goes. I've been using it 1 week. I'm already a huge advocate for the product. So let's see where it goes. I'll keep you
Yeah,
posted.
the question is, are you going to be using it 4 weeks from now? Because
That's
that's always
exactly. That's what I say. We'll see where it goes. So maybe we'll put a reminder on
Yep.
maybe it's listening right now. Hey, put a reminder.
All right, let's keep speed running. Got 4 minutes here.
Yeah, the last thing, something personal. I think mine's very clear. Milo, Chuck Mosman was born on Monday at 7 pounds, 7 ounces at 7:39 a.m.
Mhm.
So that's been my week of something personal. So it's like I said, trying to keep him alive.
Yeah, I mean, and I can see, Matt, you never have bags under your eyes. It's like the first time I've ever seen that. So I know you're really tired.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week for me. So
Yeah. But yeah, congrats again.
Thank you very much.
Try to get some sleep.
Yeah, I will do my best. I'm definitely looking out for Amanda. She's
Yeah.
got to get the sleep, not me. So what about
But yeah.
yourself? You had the
Uh,
birthday, you're feeling older, you're doing more escape rooms.
we got another escape room scheduled for this weekend.
Okay.
I've been out of town and just like generally traveling a lot, so a lot of my like personal weekly schedule has been disrupted. So I'm just kind of excited to kind of get back into things. But the and then now it's starting to get on my mind. And in April I'm getting married. And then
Oh, I didn't
May,
I forgot you were just
yeah,
I for some reason thought you were married. I didn't realize you're boyfriend, girlfriend. I guess that's the way it seemed as you guys had been together for so long.
yeah, yeah. We basically act like we're married, so it's more of a formality. But
Well, congrats. Do you have like a venue where this is going to be, stuff like that figured
we're
out?
we're doing pretty low key. It's like a 45-minute ceremony on the beach, and the
Perfect.
destination wedding in Hawaii, and then
Oh,
we're
really?
honeymooning. Yeah, a month later, in where is it? Bora Bora, I think.
You will be okay. So we should talk about that offline because that's where
Okay.
Amanda and I went.
Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.